Hi everyone. I welcome you all to yet another episode of History Marathon classes. I welcome you all. So, as you all know, we have been discussing about ancient history and which part of ancient history. I was specifically in our last class, if you remember, we were talking about Buddhism. Okay, Buddhism, and we spoke quite many things about Buddhism. Our last class of Zuntu, the last thing that we had spoken about Buddhism was teachings of Buddha. Okay, and what will come under teachings of Buddha? As we all know, under teachings of Buddha, the four noble truths are very, very important, and also the path which was shown by Buddha, that is the eightfold path. Now, today we will carry, okay, we will go forward from there, but before that, I would like to share something with you guys. You can join our WhatsApp and Telegram group, and if you join these two groups, you will always stay updated because we keep sharing a lot of stuff in these two groups and stuff which will help you crack this particular examination. And you can find, you can download the PPT also of today's class by clicking the link given in the description, and you can join these two groups by clicking on the link given in the description of this video. Okay, now moving further ahead, as you all might be knowing, we are also coming up, we have already started this interview guidance program for APAC CCE 2022, and this particular program has got a lot of things. Okay, it has got a whole lot of aspects like one-to-one individual profiling session, multiple online and offline seminar workshop sessions, important current affairs discussion classes by senior faculties of CSAP, PDF materials, one-to-one mock interview sessions with esteemed panelists. And this is the panelist which we are coming up with. This panelist is, some of the most distinguished people of India are a part of this panel, including Shri Anil Swarup sir, who is a retired IAS officer, and he was the former Coal Secretary of India, besides being the author of many noted books. Then we have with us Shri Robin Kalita sir. He is a retired IRTS officer. He was also the former director of IRCTC, and he has got immense experience as far as APAC is concerned because he was a former external member of the APAC interview board. Okay, we also have with us Sri Omyo Kumar Bora. He was the former APAC chairman. Then obviously we have with us Sri Rajdeep Lekharu, who is the director of Civil Services Achievers Point. Then we also have with us Sri Jepulris Kalita, who happens to be the senior faculty and department head of CSAP, and I am also a part of this interview guidance program. I am Ijaz Ahmed, and I'm a senior faculty of CSAP. So let's move ahead and see. As part of this, registration is going on. The starting date is 18th of August, and the various aspects which will come under this interview guidance program will be covered on online as well as offline mode. Okay, will be covered on online as well as offline mode. Now, as part of this, we had already conducted the first leg of this interview guidance program, and it was conducted on 25th of August. Okay, it was conducted on 25th of August, wherein a Zoom session was conducted, and it was conducted where in that particular Zoom session, all the doubts of the candidates regarding the interview, regarding the last stage of APAC civil service examination were cleared by none other than Sri Robin Kolita sir. And it was we got a phenomenal response for that particular video, and it was not conducted on Zoom that day, it was conducted on YouTube, so you guys can still go and watch that video. Similarly, we are coming up with a similar YouTube session on 10th of September 2023 with none other than Sri Anil Swarup sir, who is a retired IAS officer, and he was the former Coal Secretary of India, besides being the author of many best-selling works. Okay, and we are going to conduct this session on 10th of September starting from 11:30 a.m. So moving further ahead, so in our last class we were talking about Buddhism, so I will start the class by talking about Buddhism itself. See, good evening everyone. Good evening Pushpanjali, good evening Priyanka, good evening Kashmita. The thing is that in our last class, the last thing that we were talking about was the teachings of Gautam Buddha. So today I will be starting this class with something very very important. Okay, today I shall be starting the class with something very very important. And what is this thing which is very very important? This is stupa. This is stupa. Okay, this is stupa. Now, what exactly is stupa? See, stupa is very very important from the perspective of art and culture. Stupa is very very important from the perspective of art and culture. And stupa, basically, in a very simple language, if I have to put it simply, stupa is a Buddhist place of worship. Okay, in the simplest of terms, stupa is nothing but it's a Buddhist place of worship. Stupa. Now, there is much more to stupa, of course. There is much more to stupa. First and foremost, we have to know one thing about stupa. These stupas predate. They predate Buddha. Okay, what is the meaning of this sentence? This sentence means, a sentence to meaning hall, je Buddhar agoteo stupas asile. Okay, stupas predate Buddha. This was even asked. Okay, this was even asked by UPSC this year in the prelims. Okay, this question was asked. It was one of the statements. I mean, a question was there in the UPSC in the last UPSC prelims regarding stupas, and this was one of the statements being given in that particular question. Okay, so always remember this. Stupas predate Buddha. Buddhism or agato stupas asile. But the stupas we know, okay, the way we know stupas today, today, it was Buddhism or stupas came to be associated with Buddhism after the death of Buddha. And that's the way we know stupas today. But stupas were present even before Buddha. Obviously, they did not have any association with Buddhism back then. How could they have any association? Because Buddhism was started by Gautam Buddha. And stupas were there even before the birth of Gautam Buddha. Maybe. But Gautam Buddha, he saw stupas. When he was alive, he saw stupas. Those stupas were not made under his orders. He saw stupas. The stupas already existed during his lifetime. So they must have existed even before his birth. But those stupas were not associated with Buddhism. Nevertheless, one thing is very clear according to certain historians, like for example Romila Thapar. They are of the opinion that stupas were a sacred thing, but we do not exactly know the nature of those stupas. What were those? Which were those people who used to worship those stupas, or what were they worshipped for? We do not know all that. The only thing that is certain regarding the stupas, which stupas which came before Buddhism, the only thing we can be sure about is that those stupas were of a sacred nature. Those were also of a sacred nature. So anyway, those stupas are not very important for us. The stupas which existed before Buddha, or which are not associated, or which were not associated with Buddhism, are not very very important. From the point of view of this examination, we mainly need to focus on those stupas which became a very integral part of Buddhism. Okay, we will mainly focus on those stupas. So anyway, stupas predate Buddha. Okay, stupas predate Buddha, and I've already said that stupas gradually they became what? They became a very important Buddhist religious place. How did they become a very important religious place? What is the association of stupa with Buddhism, or when did the association of stupa with Gautam Buddha begin? When did the association of stupas with Gautam Buddha begin? According to legends, or according to certain texts, or according to how to put it across, according to the Buddhist religion. Okay, according to Buddhist texts, according to certain sources, Gautam Buddha, while he was alive, see, because some time ago I told you guys that stupas were there even during the lifetime of Gautam Buddha, and those stupas were not constructed under the orders of Gautam Buddha. They were used for a different purpose. But Gautam Buddha was somehow he was somehow fascinated by the idea of stupas. He somehow liked the stupas, and even when he was alive, even while he was alive, he expressed a desire to be buried in a stupa after his death. Okay, he must have said this to some of his disciples. He must have said this to one or two of his disciples, that when I die, bury my ashes or bury me in a stupa. Now, because he expressed that desire during his lifetime, once he died, his ashes, his body was cremated. It is said that, as per the widely held belief, his body was first cremated, and when the cremation was over, the ashes were brought and the ashes were buried in a stupa. That's how the association of stupas with Buddhism began. Okay, and we will mainly focus on this particular association of stupas with Buddhism. Am I clear? Okay. So, see, so we now need to focus. We now need to mainly focus on what? We now need to mainly focus on few things. First and foremost, we need to be familiar, or we need to learn about the various parts of a stupa. What exactly does a stupa look like is the first question we should ask. And this stupa, see, why is Buddhism? Why do we give so much of importance to Buddhism? For the last couple of classes, I have been talking only about Buddhism. Why? Because Buddhism is not just important from the point of view of religion. Buddhism is important not just from the point of view of religion, but Buddhism is also very, very important for this examination, because Buddhism led to the growth and development of a lot of art and architecture. Okay, Buddhism, it led to the growth and development. It led to a huge growth and development in the realm of art and architecture in India. So Buddhism not only has a close connection with the various, Buddhism not only has made a lot of contributions in the sphere of religion in India, but it has also made a lot of contribution in the domain of art and culture. Because it has got a deep connection with art and culture, automatically Buddhism becomes very, very important for us. And the thing which we are talking about now, stupas are intimately related with art and culture. Stupas are deeply related with art and culture. Now, let's try to understand what a stupa is. What does it look like? I will draw a diagram now. So please follow this particular diagram, and the diagram which I am going to draw. Okay, the diagram which I am going to draw now, it can be compared with one of the oldest stupas. That is the Sanchi stupa, one of the oldest Buddhist stupas. It can be compared with one of the oldest Buddhist stupas. While drawing this particular stupa, I am keeping the Sanchi model in mind. You may find various models of stupa, but I am keeping the Sanchi model in mind. Okay, while drawing this particular stupa. see, what I have drawn here is, what I have drawn here, okay, what I have drawn here are the various parts of a stupa. This is what the standard stupa looks like. This is what a standard stupa looks like. See, the thing is that now I'm going to explain the meanings of each and every part of this particular stupa. Okay, and every part, please keep another thing in mind, every part has got a meaning. Every part of a stupa has got a meaning. Okay, every part represents something. Now the thing is that, see, and all these are very, very important parts of a stupa. This semicircular shape part of a stupa. I mean, as you can see here, this semicircular shape, this semicircular shape. Okay, I'm talking about this particular thing. Okay, this particular thing. This semicircular part of a stupa is known as anda. This semicircular part of a stupa is known as anda. The structure which is present right above the anda, I'm talking about this structure, is known as harmika. First of all, I will just tell you which part is known as what, and then I will go to the meaning part as to what do each of these parts mean. Okay, what do they represent? This, like I said, the structure which is present right above the anda is known as harmika. Okay, from the very middle of this particular structure, which is known as harmika, this is known as harmika. From the very middle of harmika, okay, from the very middle of harmika, from the very middle of harmika, you can see a line kind of a thing. From the very middle of harmika, you can see a line kind of a thing which goes upwards. Okay, it starts from the very middle of harmika and it goes upwards. That particular line, as you can see here, this is the line I'm talking about. Okay, this line is known as yashti, 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 and it has got another name. You may also call it danda because it looks like a stick. Okay, as we all know, danda means stick. It looks like a stick, so you can also call it danda. You can also call it yashti, or you can also call it axis mundi. Okay, you can also call it axis mundi. So this has got three names. Okay, this has got three names: yashti, danda, and axis mundi. Okay, it has got how many names? It has got three names. I will come to the purpose. Now, as you can see, these three circular things which have wrapped themselves up around the particular around this particular yashti. Okay, as you can see, these are three circular things which have wrapped themselves up. Okay, which have wrapped themselves up around the yashti. These are three circular things which are wrapping themselves up. Around the yashti. These three things are known as chhatras or chatris. Okay, these three things, they are known as chhatras or chatris because they look like an umbrella. They are umbrella shaped. They are umbrella shaped structures. So they are known as chatras or chatris. Now the thing is that then comes this part. See, this particular anda, okay, the semicircular part of a stupa, like I said, is known as anda. Now this anda is resting on a platform. This anda has to rest on a platform, or it has to stand on a platform. It stands on a platform, and the name of that platform is medhi. This particular structure I'm talking about. I'm talking about this particular structure. And what is this? Okay, what is this? You might be thinking, what is this? See, this I have drawn here in order to make you understand, or in order to give you guys an idea regarding a structure or regarding a path. This is nothing but a path. Okay, you will see a path. See, in order to reach this position, a medhi tool pabo hole, in order to reach this position, you need to climb a few stairs. Once you climb a few stairs, you will reach medhi. And after climbing a few stairs, you will also see that there is a path which goes in circles. That there is a path, you will see that the path has been constructed around the anda. Anda to sariufale eta rasta ase. A path has been constructed around the anda. That path, okay, as you can see here, because this is not a 3D diagram, so it's not possible for me to draw or to show this path in a better way. So you will have to use your imagination. Okay, so please use your imagination. This path or this road which goes around the anda, okay, which goes around the anda is known as Pradakshin Path. It is known as what? It is known as Pradakshin Path. Okay, this particular structure is known as Pradakshin Path. Okay, this particular structure is known as Pradakshin Path. Now, and one of the most important parts of a stupa is the gateway. Okay, like we know gateway, like in Namghars we have something called Batsaras or Turon. Similarly, Toran was the gateway, or it is the gateway of a stupa. Okay, it is the gateway. Gateway means what? It is, in order to reach the stupa, you have to enter the campus through a gate, right? You have to enter the campus through a gate. Now the name of that gate was Toran. It was called Toran. And in some time from now, I will tell you the significance of Toran, why Torans are very, very important from the point of view of stupas. Why are they important? Despite being just a gate, why was Toran so important? So anyway, so these are some of the most important parts of a stupa. Apart from these parts, there was another part. There were certain railings. Okay, there were certain railings. RAILINGS. There were certain railings, and the railings. Okay, what was the purpose or what was the function of those railings? Those railings used to connect. Those railings, see, in total there used to be 4 Torans. There were 4 Torans placed in 4 different directions, in north, south, east and west. There were 4 Torans. 4 Torans were placed in 4 different directions. Now, those Torans have to be, they have to be connected in some way. Okay, they have to be connected in some way, not just for aesthetic purpose, but also from the point of view of safeguarding the stupa. Otherwise, wild animals may enter the stupa and cause great damage to such a sacred structure. So you have to have what? You have to have some kind of a defense. You have to have some kind of a wall which would prevent certain creatures from entering a stupa and excuse me, and causing any damage to it. Okay, this railings were constructed in between the 4 Torans. Okay, so obviously when there were 4 Torans, so there will be gaps in between the 4 Torans. So those gaps were filled by building railings. And they were connected with the Torans. Now those railings, okay, they were known as what? Those railings were known as Vedika. Okay, I hope I am clear. What was Vedika? Vedika was simply the railings which were used to fill the gaps in between the Torans. Okay, they were the railings which used to fill the gaps in between the Torans. Okay, they were what? They were railings, and the railings were known as Vedika. Okay, now let's try to understand the meaning of each of these parts. So let's start with Anda. What does Anda represent? Okay, let's try to understand what does Anda represent. Now, this Anda has got 2 representations, or you can say this Anda has got 2 interpretations. This Anda has got 2 interpretations. This Anda has got 2 interpretations. Now, interpretation number 1. Okay, this Anda has got 2 interpretations. Interpretation number 1. মানে আমি আন্ডার স্ট্রাকচারটুকু আমি 2 ধরনে চাব পাৰো according to scholars. Okay, interpretation number 1, Buddha, Gautam Buddha. Okay, Buddha sitting in a meditative posture. Okay, Buddha sitting in a meditative posture. This is interpretation number 1. And interpretation, what is the meaning of Buddha sitting in a meditative posture? It means that as if Buddha dhyan kori ase ba Buddha dhyanot bohi ase. He is doing some kind of meditation. Buddha sitting in a meditative posture. ঠিক আছে? আৰু 2 number interpretation to ki, what is the second interpretation? The second interpretation is that anda represents cycle of life and death. Is that anda represents the cycle of life and death. Remember, cycle of life and death, and the ultimate objective in Buddhism is to break this cycle of life and death. Okay, Nibbana, that is the ultimate objective. Okay, the ultimate objective is for a soul to break this cycle of life and death. So these are the 2 interpretations of anda. Interpretation number 1, Buddha sitting in a meditative posture, and interpretation number 2, cycle of life and death. Now this is very important, and more than number 1, okay, more than interpretation number 1, focus more on interpretation number 2, because interpretation number 2 is related with understanding the significance of harmika. Okay, interpretation number 2 is related, or it has a close connection with understanding the significance of harmika. Now let's move forward. Now let's come to harmika. Okay. Now this is a harmika. Okay. This particular structure is a harmika. Now, I mean, as you can notice, or as you can make out, this harmika looks like a fire altar or havan kund. It looks like a fire altar or havan kund. So fire altar, I've said this multiple times before in my previous classes while talking about the Vedic period. Fire altar was a place, but fire altar is a place where sacrifices are made, where offerings are made to Agni. Fire altar. So fire altar is a place which has got fire in it. You have to have fire. Without fire, there cannot be any fire altar. Without fire, there cannot be any yajna or yajna. So fire is the most important part of a fire altar. And harmika has been shaped like a fire. And we also know that one of the attributes of fire is that fire burns. Okay, one of the characteristics of fire is that it burns. It burns. Now, why? The question that now arises is that why harmika has been shaped like a fire altar? It has to have a meaning. Why has it been shaped like a fire altar? Now, harmika has been shaped like a fire altar in order to give out a message. Okay, they are trying to give out a message, and what is that message? That message is that only if you sacrifice, certain negative qualities, see, where did the word sacrifice come from? Because we are talking about fire. Harmika has been shaped like a fire altar. So fire, because there is fire, there has to be sacrifice, because fire burns. Or fire, I mean, we sacrifice. Okay, havan kund is used for sacrificial purposes, for offerings. So it is trying to say, or it is trying to give us a message, or it is trying to tell us that only if you sacrifice your negative qualities, like for example, okay, if you sacrifice your negative qualities like anger, ego, greed, okay, it is trying to tell us that only if you sacrifice your negative qualities like anger, ego and greed, only if you sacrifice these negative qualities can you rise above? Okay, can you rise above the heat? Rise above the anda. See, what did I tell you? What did I tell you that anda? Didn't I tell you that interpretation number 2 of anda is connected with the interpretation of Hermika? So what does interpretation number 2 of anda say? It says that anda represents cycle of life and death. So if anda is the cycle of life and death, so if this is the cycle of life and death anda, in order to move beyond the cycle of life and death, or in other words, in order to break out from this cycle of life and death, or in other words, in order to go above this cycle of life and death. Okay, what is the meaning of go above the cycle of life and death? To break the cycle of life and death. Now, how can you go above this cycle of life and death? You can go above this cycle of life and death by sacrificing certain negative qualities like ego, anger, and greed. Now, if you do that, you can rise above the anda. That is the reason, okay, that is the reason why Hermika has been placed, why Hermika has been positioned above the anda. That is the reason why Hermika has been positioned above the anda. So it is trying to tell us that only if you sacrifice your negative qualities will you be able to rise above the anda. So Hermika represents that, and that is the reason why Hermika has been shaped like a fire altar. Okay, I hope I am clear. Please respond, guys. Okay, did you guys understand the meaning? Are we on the same page till now? What about the rest? Okay, so let's move ahead. So that is the meaning of Hermika. Now, after Hermika, so let's now focus on the Yashti, okay, which is the stick which rises from right, which rises from within the Hermika and which goes upwards, which goes in an upward direction. Okay, now let's focus on let's focus on Yashti, which rises upwards from within the Hermika. Okay, I'm talking about this particular stick, Yashti. Now, what is the meaning of this Yashti, or what does it interpret? Okay, Yashti is a stick. Yashti is a stick, and also please keep in mind the Chhatras, because after Yashti I will explain the meaning of Chhatras. Okay. Look at the position of the Chhatras. Chhatras are those structures which wrap themselves up around the Yashti. Now let's try to understand first the meaning of Yashti. Now Yashti, what is this Yashti or Danda? What is this Yashti or Danda? Yashti or Danda, what is the role that it plays? Yashti, it connects. It connects. It is believed that Yashti connects the length of the mortals with that of the immortals. Yashti or Danda? Okay. Yashti or Danda, it is that line. It is that line which connects the land of the mortals. Which connects the land of the mortals. What is the meaning of land of the mortals? The meaning of land of the mortals is what? We human beings are mortals, right? We human beings are mortals. So it connects the land of the mortals with the land of the immortals. Land of the immortals means, in other words, heaven. And heaven is the place where gods are supposed to live. So in a way, Yashti is that line which connects this world with that world. Okay, this world where human beings live with the world where gods live. Yashti. Okay, that is Yashti. After Yashti, see, now Chatras. Now, okay, you can see 3 Chatras. You can see how many Chatras? You can see 3 Chatras, or you can see 3 umbrella shaped structures wrapping themselves around a Yashti. Okay, you can see 3 umbrella shaped structures wrapping themselves around around the Yashti. Now, why 3? Okay, now we need to understand, why do we get to see 3 Chatras? Why do we get to see 3 Chatras wrapping themselves around a Yashti? Those 3 Chatras represent what? Those 3 Chatras represent the 3 Ratna of Buddhism. Those 3 Chatras represent the 3 Ratna of Buddhism. Okay, what do they represent? They represent the 3 Ratna of Buddhism. Okay, and what are the 3 Ratna of Buddhism? The 3 Ratna of Buddhism are Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. You can say that these are the 3 pillars of Buddhism. These are the 3 pillars on which Buddhism stands, or Buddhism rests. Okay, Dhamma, Buddha, and Sangha. These are the 3 pillars of Buddhism. Okay, these are the 3 pillars of Buddhism. These are very, very important. And these 3 pillars, okay, these 3 pillars put together is known as 3 Ratna of Buddhism. And this is the reason why we have 3 Chatras, not 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, the 3 Chatras represent what? The 3 Chatras represent the 3 Ratna of Buddhism. Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. So, we have spoken about Sangha earlier also. Okay, Buddha was the one who started the monastic order. The monastic order in Buddhism is known as Sangha. Okay, I'm talking about the system of male and female monks, bhikshuks and bhikkhunis. So that is known as monastic order, Sangha. Okay, these 3 are the most important parts of Buddhism. So we have got 3 Chatras. Now after Chatra, we are done with Harmika, we are done with Anda, and we already know the meaning of Medhi. Okay, Medhi is nothing but the platform. This Medhi is nothing but the platform on which the Anda stands. Okay, and I've already told you the meaning of Vedika also. Vedika is nothing but the railings which fill the gaps in between the Torans. Or you can say these are the railings which connect one Toran with the other. Okay, these are the railings. Now the railings, they also work as a defensive structure in order to protect the stupa from the invasion of unwanted creatures which may cause damage to the stupas. Now, so most of the things have been discussed already. Now let's focus on, and yeah, so I told you the meaning of Pradakshin Path. Okay, Pradakshin Path was the road which was constructed, or it was the path, not road exactly, it was a path. It was a path which was constructed around the Anda. Now, why was it important to construct a path around the Anda? It was important to construct a path, or You can say, what was the purpose of that path? Okay, what was the purpose of that path? What was the logic behind constructing such a path? The purpose of that path, the purpose of the production path, the purpose of the production path was to let the devotees, okay, the purpose of production path was to let the devotees go around the stupa in veneration of that particular structure. Okay, it was some kind of a worship. Okay, it was an act of worship, and it was considered a virtuous act. That if you go around the anda, if you go around the stupa or the anda, it is a good thing to do. So we also call it parikrama, or in English we call it circumambulate. Okay, so if you circumambulate the anda, it is a virtuous act. So they used to have a path, they used to have some kind of a circuit. They used to have a circuit which used to run along, or which used to run around the anda. That circuit or that path was known as production path. Okay, now let's focus on Toran. See, like I said, the first thing that we need to know, is that there were 4 Torans. That is the first thing that we need to know. How many Torans were there? There were 4 Torans placed in 4 different directions: north, east, okay, north, east, south and west. Okay, moving in a clockwise direction. If we move in a clockwise direction, this will be the 4 different directions in which the Torans were positioned or placed. Okay, north, east, south and west. 4 different Torans. Why 4? Okay, why 4? Now we need to understand this. Why 4 different Torans? Why not more than 4? Now this also has a meaning. See, the number was 4. The 4 Torans, what do they represent? The 4 Torans represent the 4 most important events. The 4 Torans represent the 4 most important events of the life of Gautam Buddha. The 4 Torans represent the 4 most important events of the life of Gautam Buddha. The Toran which was located on the northern side, the northern Toran. Okay, the northern Toran signifies, or the northern Toran symbolizes the birth of Gautam Buddha. The northern Toran symbolizes the birth of Gautam Buddha. Okay, the northern Toran is symbolic of the birth of Gautam Buddha. Now, after northern Toran, if you move in a clockwise direction, then will come the eastern Toran. Okay, so after birth, the eastern Toran. Now let's move in a clockwise direction. Okay, northern Toran signifies the birth of Buddha. The eastern Toran represents what? The eastern Toran represents the enlightenment moment of Gautam Buddha. When Gautam Buddha received enlightenment, when he attained enlightenment at the age of 35 under the peepal tree at Bodh Gaya, on the banks of river Nirjara. After having meditated for a total number of 48 days, as we all know, he attained enlightenment on the 49th day. Okay, so the eastern Toran represents that particular moment, the enlightenment moment of Gautam Buddha. After eastern Toran, let's further move in a clockwise direction. Then comes the southern Toran. After enlightenment, the southern Toran represents the first sermon. So after attaining enlightenment, as we all know, Gautam Buddha delivered his first sermon to 5 disciples. So the southern Toran represents the first sermon. And finally, the western Toran represents the Mahaparinibbana of Buddha. That is the death of Gautam Buddha. The western Toran represents Mahaparinibbana. And the southern Toran, like I said, it represented the first sermon, which is also known as Dhamma Chakra Pravartan in Buddhism. Okay, so this is why we have got 4 Torans in 4 different directions. This is why we have got 4 Torans in 4 different directions. Other than that, we also have to know one more thing regarding the Torans, and that one more thing is that Torans, these were the most decorated part of the stupa. Torans were the most decorated, most ornamented part of a stupa. Why? Now you have to look at the location of the Torans. Okay, the Torans were located at a distance from the stupas. They were not very, very close to the stupas. Although everything was within the same campus, but torans were located at a distance from the stupas. Okay, after entering the toran, you need to walk, okay, or you need to cover certain meters before reaching the stupa. So torans were located at such a distance. Now, why were the torans so heavily decorated? The idea was to attract the people walking or driving, or the people when they are walking past the stupa. The people when they are walking past the stupa, the idea was to attract them. The idea was to draw their attention towards the stupa. Because torans were the first point of contact. They may not be able to see the stupas from outside or from such a distance, but they will be able to see the torans. Because torans, and because stupas were located right next to the road. But you cannot directly see the stupas. The first point of contact is, so when a traveler is passing by, when a traveler is walking past the stupa, okay, he will immediately get drawn to the beauty and magnificence or to the ornamentation of the toran. Okay, he cannot, torans were so beautifully carved that they cannot go unnoticed. Travelers have to notice the torans. Now, once the torans were able to draw the attention of the travelers, so out of curiosity, the travelers might even go inside the torans to find out more about this particular structure. And when they finally go inside and find out more about stupa, when they learn so many things about Buddhism, because stupas also had, the torans also had many symbols. They were beautifully decorated with designs, motif, and the stupas also had many symbols which represented various events of the life of Gautam Buddha. So when that particular traveler will go inside and find out more about Buddhism, ultimately he might even become a Buddhist. That was the idea. The idea was simple. The idea was to attract people. The idea was to draw people towards Buddhism. Which is why, and since the torans were the first point of contact, they were heavily decorated. They were beautifully carved. Okay, the torans, the panels, okay, these are known as panels. Like this is a panel, this is a panel, this is a panel. Okay, all these are panels. The panels of the toran were heavily decorated. Mostly, they were heavily decorated mostly with Jataka tales, or mostly with stories from the Jataka tales. What is the meaning of Jataka tales? Jataka tales contain stories of the previous lives of Gautam Buddha. Okay, Jataka tales contain stories. Jataka tales have stories regarding the previous lives of Gautam Buddha. So those stories were represented. Where were those stories represented? Those stories were represented on the panels of the Toran. Am I clear? Those stories were represented on the panels, on the various panels of the Toran. Those stories were represented on the panels of the Toran, which makes Torans very important. Okay, so mostly the most intricate designs, you will be able to see the most intricate designs, the most beautiful designs of the stupa or motif on the Torans, on the panels of these Torans. So these Torans were very important. And how many Torans were there? There were 4 Torans. There were 4 Torans. Okay, now that we know about the different parts of a stupa, the next thing that we need to focus on, is now we need to focus on the different kinds of stupas. Different kinds of stupas. Okay, now we need to focus more, or now we need to focus on different kinds of stupas. What were the different kinds of stupas? Okay, now we know the meaning of a stupa. Now we also know about the different parts of a stupa. Okay, and I also told you that while drawing this particular diagram, I am keeping a particular model in mind. Okay, I have modeled this diagram on Sanchi stupa, but not every stupa looks like a Sanchi stupa, because there are different kinds of stupas. They may differ in look also. They may look different from each other as well. Okay, so generally speaking, there are 3 different kinds of stupas. There are three different kinds of stupas. Generally speaking, there are how many different kinds of stupas? There are three different kinds of stupas. There are three different kinds of stupas. First is Saririka. Second is Paribhogika. Saririka, Paribhogika, and number 3. Saririka, Paribhogika, and number 3 is Uddeshika. Okay, these are the three different kinds of stupas. See, now let's focus on Saririka. What were Saririka stupas? The word Saririka, some of you may have realized it already, that the word Saririka has got the word Sarir or Sharir, body. So Saririka stupas are those stupas which contain the bodily remains. Okay, for example, if you remember, right at the very beginning of this class, I told you that after the death of Buddha, Buddha's ashes were buried. Buddha's ashes were buried in a stupa, right? Buddha's ashes were buried. So that stupa will be an example of Saririka because ashes are what? Ashes are bodily remains. Those ashes have been formed out of the body of where that body was cremated. Okay, the end result was the ashes. So ashes have to be bodily remains. So Saririka stupas are those stupas where bodily remains of Gautam Buddha and other important Buddhist monks were buried. Okay, I am repeating myself. Saririka stupas were those stupas where the bodily remains of Gautam Buddha and the other most important monks of Buddhism were buried. Most important monks would be Anand, okay, Anand, Upali. Okay, these were some of the most important monks, or these were some of the earliest disciples of Gautam Buddha. Some of the earliest followers of Gautam Buddha. Mogallana. Okay, they were some of the earliest disciples of Gautam Buddha. Okay, so Saririka, okay, so the bodily remains, so Saririka stupa, that kind of a stupa is known as what? Saririka stupa. Now let's focus on Paribhogika. What is the meaning of Paribhogika? So, and how are Paribhogika stupas different from Saririka stupas? See, Paribhogika stupas are those stupas which contain what? Which contain relics of either Gautam Buddha or the most important monks of Buddhism. Okay, now what is the meaning of relics? For example, relics can be clothes which were used by Gautam Buddha, clothes which he used to wear, robes which he used to wear, or robes which were used by the most important Buddhist monks, robes. Okay, for example, the articles which they used, the bowl, because Buddha made a rule that every monk has to live on alms. So, in order to get the alms, he or she had to carry a bowl. So, a bowl can be also a relic. Okay, so the articles which were used by either Gautam Buddha or the most important monks, the most important Buddhist monks. Okay, so articles. So those, it could be as simple a thing as bowl. It could be as simple a thing as a piece of cloth which was used by, let's say, Gautam Buddha. Okay, so Paribhogika stupas are those stupas which contain the relics, not the bodily remains, relics, things which were used by those people when they were alive. Things which were used by those people when they were alive. Okay, and at last, Uddeshika. See, Uddeshika stupas Thank you, Rumi. Uddeshika stupas did not have anything per se. Mane Uddeshika stupas bilakot bodily remainsu nathake aru relicsu nathake. Tente Uddeshika stupas bilak hoy ki. See, Uddeshika stupas are those stupas which are constructed in fulfillment of a vow. Are you guys getting me? Uddeshika stupas are those stupas which are constructed in fulfillment of a vow. For example, if I take a vow, or let's say, I'm expecting something to happen. I am expecting something to happen, and I am today making a vow that if that thing happens as I expected it to happen, or as it turns out as per my expectation, I will construct a stupa. If a particular thing turns out as I expected it to turn out, if a particular thing happens my way, and I have stated that thing in advance, that if that particular thing turns out as I expect it to turn out, I will construct a stupa, okay, at such and such place. And if that thing happens the way I expected that to happen, I will construct the stupa. Those stupas are known as Uddeshika stupa. Uddeshika. So these are what? These are votive in nature. Votive. V-O-T-I-V-E. Votive. These are votive structures. Votive structures, votive is an English word. Okay. Votive structures are those structures which are constructed in fulfillment of a vow. Vow. V-O-W. Vow. In fulfillment of a vow. Votive structures. There are many such stupas, and votive structures or votive stupas, they look very different from the Sanchi stupa. For example, the stupa which I drew, or after the class gets over, you can check out the images of Sanchi stupa, and you can at the same time check out the image of a votive stupa. There are many votive stupas. Okay, there are many votive stupas in India and many foreign countries. So, votive stupas do not have bodily remains or relics. They are just constructed. They are just constructed in fulfillment of a vow. Just because I had taken a vow that if a particular thing happens my way, I will do this, I will construct a stupa. After that thing happens my way. Okay? So that is what? That is Uddeshika stupa. Now, so we are done with stupas. Okay? We are done with stupas. So did you guys understand? Is the stupa part clear? Did you guys understand stupas and all? Please tell me whether you guys understood. What about the rest? I want a response from each one of you, because stupas, don't take stupas lightly. They are one of the most important topics for civil services examination. Okay, especially from the point of view of art and culture. Art and culture, anyway, you guys know art and culture is a part of the syllabus. Okay, art and culture is a part of GS paper 1. And within art and culture, stupas occupy a very important place. Let me tell you that. Stupas occupy a very important place within the realm of art and culture. So if you have any doubts regarding stupas, now is the time to clarify those doubts. Palokhi, Parishmita, Nikumoni. Doimari. Kashmita, buzi paisa? Kashmita, did you understand? Pushpanjali, Priyanka Rani Datta. Kashmita, আকৌ এবাৰ কি ক'ব লাগে এক্স্যাক্টলি হে কোৱা আকৌ এবাৰ কি ক'ব লাগে kindly tell me that মই অথনি সুধিছিলো কশ্মিতা যে সব স্তূপাস বিলাকৰ কথা বুজি পাইছা নাই Okay, so stupas, I'm not going to talk about the parts, okay, because that will be very time consuming. ठीक है सर, so stupas बिला की हो? Stupas are basically they are places of worship. They are Buddhist places of worship. First of all, we need to know that they are Buddhist places of worship. তাৰ পিছত mainly আমি Buddhist stupas বিলাকৰ কথা পঢ়িব লাগিব. Why am I calling Buddhist stupas, or why am I what are these Buddhist stupas, or why do I need to be specific about the Buddhist stupas? কাৰণ বুদ্ধিজমৰ আগতেও স্তূপা বোলা এটা ষ্ট্ৰাকচাৰ আছিল, কিন্তু সেই স্তূপা বোলা ষ্ট্ৰাকচাৰটো কিহৰ কাৰণে মানুহে ইউজ কৰিছিল বা কোনখিনি মানুহে ইউজ কৰিছিল আমাৰ হাতত তাৰ একো তথ্য নাই, ঠিক আছে? we do not have any information regarding that. So যেহেতু একো তথ্য নাই, so we need to focus on stupas which were constructed after the death of Buddha and which began to be associated with Buddhism. সেই কাৰণে মই Buddhist stupas বুলি কৈছো, ঠিক আছে? And how did the association start? কাৰণ গৌতম বুদ্ধ যেতিয়া গৌতম বুদ্ধ জীবিত আছিল, so stupas were already there. So Gautam Buddha, in a way, he liked the idea of a stupa. But when he liked the idea of a stupa, at that time stupas were not a part of Buddhism. But he liked the idea of a stupa. So when he liked the idea of a stupa, he expressed his desire. Okay? He expressed his desire to be buried in a stupa after his death. He told his disciples that when I die, bury me in a stupa. So in fact, when he died, his ashes were indeed buried in a stupa. That's how stupa's association with Buddhism began. That is the first part. Okay? That is the first part. That's how the association of stupas began with Buddhism. Now after that stupas, okay, after that, as we all know, a stupa has got various parts. Okay, this is our typical, or this is our standard stupa looks like. This is how a standard stupa looks like. So this is the anda. Okay, this is the anda. Anda has got two interpretations. Okay, this structure, this hemispherical structure is known as anda, which has got two interpretations. Interpretation number one, Buddha sitting in a meditative position. Okay, what is the meaning of interpretations? There are two ways of looking at anda. Okay, anda can be looked at two different ways. Number one way of looking at anda is, okay, is what? Is calling anda a representation of Buddha meditating. It looks like as if Gautam Buddha is meditating. That is representation number one, or that is interpretation number one of anda. What is the second thing? What is the second interpretation of what anda represents? The second interpretation regarding the representation of anda is that anda represents the cycle of life and death. Cycle of life and death. And interpretation number two is important because interpretation number 2 of anda is connected with Hermika. Now look at the position of Hermika. Hermika, this particular structure is Hermika. This is known as Hermika. Hermika has been shaped like a fire altar or Havan Kund. Why has it been shaped like a fire altar or Havan Kund? They are trying to give us a message that, see, the ultimate objective in Buddhism is to break out from this cycle of life and death. So if we go by interpretation number 2 of anda, that anda represents the cycle of life and death. So Hermika is trying to tell us that if you need to move beyond, or if you need to go above the cycle of life and death, what is the meaning of going above the cycle of life and death? To break out of this particular cycle. Okay, breaking out of this particular cycle will give you what? Nibbana or moksha. So it is important to break out. So how can you break out? Or how can you go above this cycle of life and death? You can go above this cycle of life and death by sacrificing negative qualities. Okay, now you need to understand the relationship between sacrifice and this. So where does this word come from? Because fire symbolizes what? Fire symbolizes sacrifice. It has been shaped like a fire altar. So why has it been shaped like a fire altar? To tell us that you need to sacrifice, because fire altar is a place where sacrifices are made. Where sacrifices are made. So in a way they are trying to tell us that you need to sacrifice your negative attributes like ego, anger and greed here. And if you do that, you will automatically move up the cycle of life and death, that is anda. So it is this reason why Hermika has been placed above the anda, not anywhere else. Okay, Hermika has been placed above the anda in order to give us the message that this is the way you need to burn, you need to sacrifice your negative qualities here. And if you do that, you can rise above the cycle of life and death. And from right within the anda, I'm so sorry, from right within Hermika, from right within the Hermika rises a stick kind of a thing, and it goes upwards. It goes in an upward direction. Okay, and it lies in an upright position. That stick is known as Yashti, Danda or Axis Mundi. Okay, it is known as Yashti, Danda or Axis Mundi, and this Yashti, Danda or Axis Mundi is a stick. It is a stick which connects the world of the mortals with that of the immortals. That is, it connects this world of human beings with the world of the gods. Okay, now apart from these three structures, there is another structure by the name of Medhi. Medhi is simply the platform on which the anda rests. Okay, on which the anda rests. Now apart from this, there is also this Pradakshin Path. Okay, Pradakshin Path is a circular path which goes around the anda, and it has been made for the devotees to take a tour around the anda so that they understand more about Buddhism. Okay, and they do this out of their veneration for Buddhism. They go around the anda, and even today, going around holy places is considered to be a virtuous act. Okay, for example, something similar happens during the Hajj pilgrimage also in Saudi Arab. Okay, in Hinduism also there is this concept of parikrama. Okay, so, and this particular circular thing or this particular circuit was known as what? Pradakshin Path. And in English we call it what? When you move around a particular object, we call it circumambulate. Okay, we call it, it's a verb. Okay, it's a verb. To circum, S-U-R-C-U-M, circum. See, there's this word called circumference also in arithmetic. Circumference in geometry. Circumference of a triangle, circumference of a circle. So, circumambulate, A-M-B-U-L-A-T-E, circumambulate. So, when you go around the anda. So, this path was known as Pradakshin Path. Similarly, like we have gateways, like we have gateways of Namghars called Batsoras or Turons. So similarly we had Torans. See, the word Turon in fact has come from Toran. Okay, stupas used to have 4 different Torans. 4 different Torans were placed in 4 different directions: north, east, south and west. And each of the Torans represented something. The northern Toran represented the birth of Gautam Buddha. The eastern Toran represented the enlightenment moment of Gautam Buddha. The Southern Toran represented what? It represented Dhamma Chakra Pravartan, the first sermon of Gautam Buddha. And finally, the Western Toran represented Mahaparinibban, or the death of Gautam Buddha. Okay, and Torans are also special because it was on the panels of these Torans. It was on the panels of these Torans that stories from Jataka tales were carved. That stories from Jataka tales were shown on the panels of these Torans. Why? Because Torans were the first point of contact. When a traveler is passing by a stupa, his eyes will first fall on the Toran. And if the Torans are made beautiful, there is a possibility that that particular traveler might even go inside. Okay, it might even go inside to check out the stupa. And if he goes inside to check out the stupa, there is again a possibility that he may get attracted to Buddhism, and finally he may even become a Buddhist. So the idea, in simple words, the idea behind decorating the Torans heavily was to draw more and more people towards Buddhism. Am I clear? And the second thing which we need to know about stupas is what? There are three different kinds of stupas. Tinta prakarar thake stupas. Three different kinds. Mainly there are three different kinds of stupas. Saririka, Saririka, Paribhogika and Uddeshika. Saririka stupas are those stupas which contain the bodily remains of either Gautam Buddha or the most important Buddhist monks like Ananda, Upali, Sariputta. Okay, there were other important Buddhist monks also. And these three monks that I took the names of just now, all three were contemporaries of Gautam Buddha. So the contemporaries of Gautam Buddha, those monks who were present, who had seen Gautam Buddha, who were present, who took orders from Gautam Buddha, are the most important Buddhist monks. So those stupas which contain the bodily remains of either Gautam Buddha or these Buddhist monks who are much venerated in Buddhism, that kind of a stupa is known as Saririka stupa. Similarly, those stupas which contain the relics or which contain the things being used by either Gautam Buddha or these monks whom I took the names of, those stupas are known as Paribhogika stupas. Paribhogika. And finally, those stupas, and finally we had Uddeshika stupas. Uddeshika stupas neither has bodily remains nor relics. But Uddeshika stupas are those stupas which are constructed in fulfillment of a vow. Amar eta jetia akha eta puron hoy, it is at that point in time that we construct a stupa. Uddeshika stupas, they did not have anything. Aru, moi je tumalokok koi asu, where ashes were buried. Where were the ashes buried? Ashes were buried somewhere in the Hermika. Hermikat ashes bilak bury kora hoisile. Not just the ashes, even the relics. In which part of the stupa where the bodily remains or the relics buried? Within the Hermika. Somewhere within the Hermika. Okay. Now let's talk about the Buddhist councils. See, there were 4 different councils which were held. Now, what is the meaning of Buddhist councils? Buddhist councils were grand occasions. Okay, Buddhist councils, they were grand occasions which were held with much fanfare. There were big occasions on which some of the most important decisions regarding Buddhism were taken. And these decisions which were taken during all the 4 Buddhist councils had long-term consequences for Buddhism. They had long-term consequences for Buddhism. In each of the 4 Buddhist councils, as we shall see now, some of the most important decisions were taken. So these are known as Buddhist councils, which are very, very, very important from the examination point of view. So, we need to know certain things about each of the Buddhist councils, like for example, year, place and all. Okay, like for example, year, place and all. So, I would ask you guys to make Just wait. Name. Six. Okay, make 6 columns. Make 6 columns and make sure the 6th column is the broadest. Make 6 columns and make sure the last column that is the broadest of all. This is also a column. Okay. Name, first column, name, year, place, patron, president, and remarks. You know, I'm repeating, name, year, place, patron. What is the meaning of patron? Patron, under patron, we will be learning the names of the kings who supported, who sponsored these councils, or who provided the most amount of support. So these were big occasions. These were big occasions. These were big councils. These were big, massive gatherings where people from far and wide came to attend, where guests were invited from far and wide. So it was important for an influential person to support such a council. And who can be more influential than kings? So under patron, we will be knowing about kings. Kings who supported each of the 4 councils. Okay, so name. So name would be obviously First Buddhist Council. So I'm just writing BC. Okay, BC stands for Buddhist Council. First Buddhist Council. First Buddhist Council. Okay, BC stands for Buddhist Council. So First Buddhist Council. Then year. Okay, what will be the year? So under year, obviously we will focus on the year in which the first Buddhist council was held. In which year was the first Buddhist council held? Can anyone tell me in which year was the first Buddhist council held? When was it? When did it take place, the first Buddhist council? Yes, Doimari, you are right. Okay, you are right. The first Buddhist council was held in the year 483 BCE. See, this year is very important because this is the same year in which Buddha died. This is the same year in which Buddha died. So the first Buddhist council, are you guys realizing that the first Buddhist council is taking place the same year in which Buddha died? Because Buddha has died. Now some important decisions, some life-altering decisions have to be taken. Okay, regarding the course of action that needs to be taken in order to propagate the ideas of Gautam Buddha. Now a plan has to be made, a proper plan has to be made. Okay, place. Place is Sattaparani Caves, Rajgir. Place is Sattaparani Caves, Rajgir. Okay, what is the place? Sattaparani Caves, Rajgir. This is the place where the first Buddhist council was held. This is the place where the first Buddhist council was held. Who was the patron? Who was the patron? Patron was Ajatashatru. Patron was Ajatashatru. Who was Ajatashatru? He was the then king of Magad. What was Magad? Magad was the most powerful of the 16 Mahajanapadas. Like I said in the very beginning of this topic, there were 16 Mahajanapadas according to certain Buddhist and Jaina texts. There were how many Mahajanapadas? 16. And out of these 16 Mahajanapadas, Magad was the most powerful Mahajanapada. And that Magad had a dynasty. Okay, at one point in time, Magad was under the rule of a dynasty by the name of Haryanka dynasty. Haryanka. Haryanka dynasty was a, see, different dynasties had ruled over Magad at different points in time. So Haryanka dynasty was one such dynasty. And at this particular time, the ruler of the Haryanka dynasty, which was ruling over Magad, was Ajatashatru. He was the king of Magad at that time. So you can well imagine the power and influence of Ajatashatru. And Ajatashatru was a contemporary of Gautam Buddha. And Ajatashatru automatically becomes important for us because when Ajatashatru was the king of Magad, Gautam Buddha died. Okay. Anyway, then president was Mahakashyapa. Mahakashyapa, yeah. President was Mahakashyapa. Okay, president was Mahakashyapa. Because we all need a president, right? We are organizing such a big event. Okay, that event has to have a president who would preside over the meeting, who would make sure things go on smoothly. It is his responsibility to make sure that the things go on smoothly. The king will not come and ensure that. The king will support. The king will patronize. The king will never come and make sure these things happen. So who has president or the chairman has to preside over the meeting, no? So Mahakashyapa, he was a very, very revered Buddhist monk of that time. Okay, and the Sattaparni caves, Palashi had said Rajgriha. So Rajgir was also known as Rajgriha. So you may either call it Rajgir or Rajgriha, same thing. Rajgir or Rajgriha. Capital of, it was the first capital of Magad. Okay, Rajgir, this was the first capital of Magad. Very, very important. This was the first capital of Magad. Anyway, under remarks, we need to know a couple of things. We need to know a couple of things under remarks because some of the most important developments had taken place during the first Buddhist council. Development number 1. Okay, what did we get during the first Buddhist Buddhist council? Number 1, Sutta Pitaka. And Vinaya Pitaka. Okay, Sutta Pitaka and Vinaya Pitaka. Now, what is Sutta Pitaka and what is Vinaya Pitaka? See, some of you may have heard of this word called Tripitaka. Okay, some of you may have heard of this word called Tripitaka. Tree here, as we all know, tree means three. So these three, Tripitaka means what? 3 of the earliest Buddhist texts. 3 of the earliest Buddhist religious texts, Tripitaka. So those 3 books put together is known as Tripitaka. So of those 3 books, of those 3 Buddhist texts, which are considered to be the 3 earliest Buddhist religious texts, so hey tinikhonor bhitorot 2 were compiled during the first Buddhist council, Sutta Pitaka and Vinaya Pitaka. Okay, so first of all, we have to understand who compiled what. Sutta Pitaka was compiled by Ananda. Okay, Sutta Pitaka was compiled by whom? Ananda. Okay, I have mentioned Ananda some time ago as well. Ananda, it is said that Ananda was the dearest disciple of Gautam Buddha. Some people consider him to be the dearest disciple of Gautam Buddha, Ananda. So Ananda was the one who compiled Sutta Pitaka. Now Sutta Pitaka consists what? What does it comprise? Sutta Pitaka comprises what? Sutta Pitaka includes the teachings of Gautam Buddha. So he's compiling, he's not making anything anew. He's not making a new thing, he's just compiling. Bustukhini, things were scattered, he is bringing them together under one roof. All the teachings of Gautam Buddha. So Sutta Pitaka is that text, is that religious Buddhist text which contains the teachings of Gautam Buddha, and the compilation was made by Ananda during the first Buddhist council. Similarly, there was another very, very important disciple of Gautam Buddha by the name of Upali. Okay, Upali. Upali compiled what? It was Upali who compiled Vinaya Pitaka. Vinaya Pitaka. Now, Vinaya Pitaka. How was Vinaya Pitaka different from Sutta Pitaka? Vinaya Pitaka included the monastic rules. Okay? Like I said before, Buddhism was the first religion which started the concept of having monks, male and female monks. And that, that entity came to be known as Sangha or the monastic order. So obviously when you have something as important as Sangha, and when you have such a vast network of male and female monks, so many people are involved, so you need to have certain rules and regulations in place, right? So Buddha himself made these rules and regulations. Buddha himself, during his lifetime itself, for example, he said that monks are supposed to keep on traveling. Monks are supposed to keep on traveling throughout the year except for the rainy season. So he also started the system. He also started something called Vasavassa, where when Vasavassa is that time, is the only time when monks are supposed to take rest. Other than that, they are supposed to keep on traveling. And they are supposed to live on alms. They are supposed to shave their heads. They are supposed to wear a robe. These are certain rules and regulations which were made by Gautam Buddha himself. Now Upali is simply compiling those rules and regulations of the Sangha, and he is giving them a form of a text by the name of Vinaya Pitaka. So Vinaya Pitaka contains what? Vinaya Pitaka contains the monastic rules, or you can also call Vinaya Pitaka contains, this Vinaya Pitaka by the way is important, okay, please keep in mind. Okay, Vinaya Pitaka has to do with something which happens during the second Buddhist council, so please keep in mind the importance of Vinaya Pitaka. Please keep in mind the importance of Vinaya Pitaka. Okay, Vinaya Pitaka includes the rules and regulations of the Sangha. Okay, Vinaya Pitaka includes the rules and regulations of the Sangha. So these were the two most important developments. Okay, these were the two most important developments that had taken place during the first Buddhist council. These were the two most important developments. Okay, first of all we got Sutta Pitaka, and second of all we got Vinaya Pitaka. Okay, now let's move ahead. So similarly, now second Buddhist council, so under name just write second, year 383 BCE approx. How will you remember this? The second Buddhist council took place exactly 100 years after the first Buddhist council. The second Buddhist council took place exactly 100 years after the first Buddhist council. So first Buddhist council 483, second Buddhist council 383 BCE. The place was Vaishali. Vaishali is in Bihar, okay? Place was Vaishali. Patron was Kal Ashok. Don't confuse Kal Ashok with Ashoka the Great. Both were entirely two different individuals. Don't confuse Kal Ashok with Ashoka the Great, okay? Kal Ashok was a different person. Who was Kal Ashok? He was also a ruler. He was also the king of Magad. During this time, during 383 BCE, it was Kala Ashok who was the king of Magad. Okay, 483 BCE, Ajatashatru was the king of Magad. Now he has been replaced by Kala Ashok. And Kala Ashok also belongs to a different dynasty by the name of Shishunak dynasty. He does not belong to the Haryanka dynasty, to which great kings like Bimbisara and Ajatashatru belong to. Okay, belong to. Kala Ashok belongs to another dynasty by the name of Shishunak dynasty, but it also rules over Magad. And okay, president, who happens to be the president of the Second Buddhist Council? Sabakami. 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 Sabakami was the he was the president. He was the president of the Second Buddhist Council. Now, under remarks. Now, what was the most important development to have taken place during the Second Buddhist Council? See, now the thing is that why is the Second Buddhist Council important? Second Buddhist Council is important because for the first time Buddhism saw an informal division within itself. Okay, for the first time Buddhism saw an informal division during the Second Buddhist Council. Okay, within the first time Buddhism saw an informal division. Buddhism got divided informally. See, I am using the word informally, I am not using the word formally. For the first time we get to see an informal division within Buddhism during the Second Buddhist Council. Actually what happened was, see, the dispute was regarding Vinaya Pitaka. What did I say Vinaya Pitaka was? Vinaya Pitaka, Vinaya Pitaka comprised rules and regulations that the monks are supposed to follow, or members of the Sangha, no matter how you may call it. Okay, or members of the Sangha are supposed to follow. ठीक है से Vinaya Pitaka. Now, certain differences arose within the monks regarding Vinaya Pitaka. Now, what kind of differences? See, there were certain monks who were in favor of changing the rules and regulations of the Vinaya Pitaka. Okay, for example, there were certain monks who denied shaving their heads, who denied traveling from one place to another. They said that we will not survive just on alms. Let's do other things. Let's take money from people. Let's get supported by people. But there were many other such monks who were not in the favor of changing the rules and regulations mentioned in Vinaya Pitaka. They wanted to follow the original rules and regulations being made by Gautam Buddha himself, because Vinaya Pitaka contained what? Vinaya Pitaka contained the original rules and regulations made by Gautam Buddha himself. So that's why I say the differences arose because of Vinaya Pitaka. One group was saying that, one group was in the favor of changing the Vinaya Pitaka to their advantage, to make it more convenient for them. But the other group said, no, we will not make any changes. We will follow what Buddha told us. Okay, and there was this conflict going on. Okay, there was this conflict going on between these two groups, and the Second Buddhist Council was organized in order to settle the differences between these two groups. Okay, that was the reason why the Second Buddhist Council was organized. The Second Buddhist Council was organized in order to settle the differences between these two groups. But, so, the Second Buddhist Council was organized, but it failed. It failed to settle the differences. The differences could not be settled because both the groups were adamant. Both the groups were adamant. They could not come at a what? They could not come at a compromise. They could not enter into an understanding. So both the groups could not be brought on the same page, because of which during the Second Buddhist Council, Buddhism witnessed an informal division for the very first time. And those two groups got divided informally. Those monks who were in favor of change, who were in favor of changing the Vinaya Pitaka, or who were in favor of changing the rules and regulations of the Sangha, those monks or that particular group came to be known as Mahasanghikas. Mahasanghikas. Who were Mahasanghikas? They wanted change. They wanted change. Where did they want changes? They wanted changes in the Vinaya Pitaka. What is Vinaya Pitaka? Rules and regulations that the monks are supposed to follow, as told by Gautam Buddha himself. Okay? So Mahasanghikas, they came to be known as Mahasanghikas. And the other monks who were not in the favor of making any kind of a change in the Vinaya Pitaka, those monks came to be known as Sthaviravadins. এইখিনি মংসে কি ক'লে যে আমাক একো হাল হলনি আমি নকৰো বা আমি একো নকৰো চেঞ্জেস আমি একো নকৰো আমি বুদ্ধাই যি আমাক কৈ গৈছে আমি হেমতে জীৱন যাপন কৰিম আমাক একো হলনি নালাগে so okay and those particular or those monks or that group came to be known as Sthaviravadins. And if you look at the literal meaning of Sthaviravadins, okay, what is the literal meaning of Sthaviravadins? The literal meaning of Sthaviravadins is people who believed in the teachings of elders. Teachings of elders. Okay, those who believed in the teachings of elders were known as Sthaviravadins. Teachings of elders. Those who believed in the teachings of elders. So we believe in the teachings of elders. We will not deviate from the path which has been shown to us by our elders. We will do what they told us to do. And our elders were taught by Buddha himself. So why will we deviate from the path being shown to us by our elders? So we believe in the teachings of elders. We will not deviate from that path. Buji paisa? And that group came to be known as Sthaviravadins. So second Buddhist council is important for this reason. Okay? Second Buddhist council is important for this particular reason. Am I clear? Second Buddhist council is important for this particular reason. Now let's very quickly move to the third Buddhist council. See, third Buddhist council, third. Okay? Then comes year. Year would be around 250 BCE. Place would be Patliputra. Present day Patna. Okay? Patron. Now, obviously, patron would be Ashoka the Great. Okay? President is a very important person. Okay? President would be Mogaliputta Tissa. Okay, president would be Mogaliputta Tissa. He will be the president. Mogaliputta Tissa. He was a very important Buddhist monk of that time, and some historians even say that he came all the way from Ceylon, Sri Lanka. Some historians are also of the opinion that this was the Buddhist monk who came from Sri Lanka. Now, what will come under remarks? Why is this Buddhist council very important? This Buddhist council is important because many developments took place. First and foremost, development number 1. This person, this great Buddhist monk called Mogaliputta Tissa, who was the president of this council, he came up with the third text of Tripitaka. So up till now we have gotten 2 texts of Tripitaka, and we know that Tripitaka comprises 3 Buddhist religious texts. Now it was during the third Buddhist council that we got the third Buddhist religious text, and the third Buddhist religious text was Abhidhamma Pitaka. Abhidhamma Pitaka. And who composed it or who compiled it? Mogaliputta Tissa. It was his brainchild. And what was Abhidhamma Pitaka? It dealt with Buddhist philosophy. Okay? Just like Upanishads deal with the philosophy of Hinduism, just like Upanishads, just like books like Upanishads or Bhagavad Gita, they deal with the philosophical aspect of Hinduism. Okay, most importantly Upanishads. So just like that, Abhidhamma Pitaka, it talks about the philosophical side of Buddhism. It talks about the philosophical side of Buddhism. This was development number 1. Then development number 2. See, many things took place during the third Buddhist Council. Development number 2. See, it was during this Buddhist Council that Ashoka is said to have, Ashoka the Great, now I am talking about Ashoka the Great. Ashoka is said to have expelled, he expelled 60,000 heretics from Sangha. He is said to have expelled 60,000 heretics from Sangha. Now, what is the meaning of heretics? Heretics were those people who were trying to deviate from the original teachings of Gautam Buddha. Okay, heretics were those people who were trying to deviate. See, Ashoka was a follower of what? Okay, just a while ago we talked about Sthaviravadins. Okay, just a while ago we talked about Sthaviravadins. Remember, Sthaviravadins were those people, were those monks who believed in the teachings of elders. Ashoka was a follower of that group. Ashoka belonged to that group, the group of Sthaviravadins. Ashoka also did not want to deviate from the original teachings of Gautam Buddha. So obviously Ashoka was favoring that group. Because Ashoka was favoring that group, Ashoka did not like, or Ashoka disliked those monks who were in favor of changes. And those monks came to be known as heretics. Okay, heretics would also include another group of monks. See, during this time, Sangha was at the height of its popularity. Many people wanted to become members of Sangha, because Sangha, the moment you become a member of the Sangha, automatically your position in the society rises, because Sangha, with time, Buddhism became so popular that Sangha got associated with what? Status. It was a status symbol. So because such amount of status was attached with Sangha, automatically, many people just wanted to become members of Sangha, even if they did not have any affinity, even if they did not have any likelihood, even if they did not have any fondness for Buddhism, they just wanted to become members of Sangha to reap the benefits out of it. Okay, just to reap the social and economic benefits out of it, not out of their love for Gautam Buddha or Buddhism. So those can also be included under heretics. And Ashoka came to know about these heretics as well, and he took a decision to expel 60,000 of heretics from Sangha. They were expelled from Sangha. This decision was also taken during the third Buddhist Council, and another decision was taken to send his children, okay, his daughter and his son. Mahendra was the name of his son, and Sanghamitra was the name of his daughter. Ashoka took a decision to send them to Sri Lanka to spread Buddhism. And while sending them off to Sri Lanka, Ashoka also handed over to them a sapling of the famous Bodhi tree, the tree under which Gautam Buddha meditated and finally attained enlightenment. So Ashoka also handed over a sapling of the tree to his children. And though it is said that although we do not have any historical evidence about this particular incident, okay, but it is widely believed that Sanghamitra, okay, it is widely believed that Sanghamitra, the children of Ashok, they took Buddhism to Sri Lanka. That's how Buddhism, that's how Buddhism went to Sri Lanka. And finally, they also planted that sapling. Okay, that particular sapling today, it is even present today. Okay, it has grown into a sprawling tree now, and that thing is still present, and they planted that thing at Anuradhapur in Sri Lanka. At that time, it was known as Ceylon. Okay, so still there is this place called Anuradhapur. So Anuradhapur, you will find this tree in Anuradhapur. Okay, it was Ashoka's children who planted this at Anuradhapur in Sri Lanka. Okay, with that we have come to an end of today's class. I will continue from where we have left today in my next class. Okay, thank you so much and take care.